Today we are going to discuss retaliation playbook. So what your employer just hopes you'll never find out. First of all, figure a concerned employee who senses a chilling shift in the workplace atmosphere. And little does she know, she might be facing retaliation from her employer. And in a dimly just lit office, just late on Friday, Jane sits alone at her desk, just heart pounding, and just days ago, she filed a formal complaint just about a serious issue at work and something just she knew was wrong and hopes the company would address. And it's instead of praise for doing the right thing, she's met with the cold chairs in the hallway and a deafening just silence in the meetings. So what's going on? That question. And Jane is about just to discover that she is up against a hidden retaliation playbook. Then written rules, just some employees used to strike back when an employee just dares to speak up. And workplace retaliation is more common than any just that many may realize. It's number one, just the most common claim in the EOC. So in fact, retaliation has become the number one issue in the workplace discrimination cases, according for more than a half of all complaints. And in 2023 alone, so the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission received more than 60,000 retaliation charges, representing about 60% of all discrimination complaints. And it's illegal for a company to punish someone for reporting wrongdoing or asserting their rights. Yet it's happening far too often. Why? Because unscrupulous employees who hope you won't just recognize the subtle and not so subtle signs of retaliation. So you won't fight back, and they operate in the shadows of plausibility, making changes in ways that feel just ordinary enough that you might doubt yourself, but not anymore. So today we are going to pulling back the curtain on this retaliation playbook, move by move, so you can spot the tricks your employer hopes you'll never find out. First of all, speaking up about harassment, discrimination, or safety concerns, or any illegal activity at work is supposed to be just the right thing to do. And people like Jane takes a brave step, believing in justice and expecting protection, and instead, what they sometimes get is a target on their back, as retaliation can be overt, like an outright firing, or covert, like a series of subtle jabs that make an employer just work life miserable. And the scariest part is, unless you know what to look for, you might not even realize. So what's happening until you're in deep trouble, you're fired. Let's break down the retaliation playbook. First of all, a series of common tactics that bad bosses deploy to undermine or punish employers who assert their rights. As for each play, we will illustrate with fictionalized just slice of a Jane story based on real life cases and explain how that tactic works. And by the end, you will not only recognize these schemes, you will also know exactly why employers use them and how to protect yourself. So first play is the isolation play, or cutting you out of a loop. As the first sign of trouble for Jane was subtle. So she stopped getting invited to her meetings, and she would always attend it. And one morning she found out that her team just held an important project discussion just as the day before, and a meeting she was never told about. And at lunch, coworkers just whom she used to chat with quickly grow just quiet, and when she walks by, and her once friendly office feels like a clique that no longer just includes her. And Jane is left wondering, did I do something wrong? And this isolation play is a classic opening move in the retaliation playbook, and employer or a manager aims to exclude and alienate the outspoken employee. So it's always suddenly you are just kept out of email chains, meeting invites, and just casual gatherings, and it's as you've become invisible. And managers might claim it was an oversight, or we must have forgotten you to see you, but when it keeps just happening, it's likely an accident. So no accident, and being just intentionally just left out in a way to make you feel unwelcomed and unsupported. And it's psychologically just draining. And the goal is to make your question your just standing and even doubt why you spoke in the first place. And by isolating Jane, your employer hopes she will be powerless and maybe even quit on her own. And after all, you're not part of them, part of the team. And it's easy to start just thinking you don't belong there anymore, which she thought about. Play 2 is micromanagement trap, as setting you up to fail. As after Jane's complaint, her supervisor, who used to trust her, becomes just a hovering presence. So he picks apart her work just down the tiniest detail. So I need to approve every email before you send it. Or he insists and then starts just demanding hourly progress reports. And Jane, a top performer for years, just suddenly can't do anything right in his eyes. And he's watching, waiting for her to slip up, and the pressure is high, and Jane finds herself just second-guessing tasks she used to ace. And this is a micromanagement trap. Another play is a retaliation arsenal. And the boss strategy here is to place an employee just under a microscope, hoping to find or create mistakes under not just normal circumstances. And Jane's performance was stellar, but now, by nitpicking and constantly just criticizing, the manager is constructing just a narrative that Jane is a problem. And this often happens right after an employee just speaks up, and suddenly their work is just unfairly judged by harsher standards. And it's a stress test with a malicious twist, and the constant just monitoring and impossible standards are meant to break your confidence and potentially just cause errors that wouldn't just otherwise happen. And if Jane does make a slip, you can believe it will be recorded and used against her later. And the end game of this play, to either punish an employer or to sign out just of frustration, or to compile a handy list of performance issues to justify the next retaliatory move. And the play 3 is a paper trail plot as the next retaliatory move. So from a star employee to a problem employee. As true to her excellent record, as a Jane manages to meet even the unfair scrutiny of a play 2. But the playbook is just warming up. So during the next quarterly review, she sits down with HR and just is blindsided by scathing performance evaluations. And it's full of major criticism and sudden complaints. And her communication style is lacking. Her work quality isn't what it used to be. And Jane is stunned. So she has emails of praise from just a month ago to add insult to injury. And she's written up for 2 minor mistakes that ordinarily just wouldn't even warrant a mention. So it feels like someone has written her story and the company's overnight. And welcome to the paper trail plot, where the manager starts documenting a case against the employee. And this often involves unwarranted negative reviews, write-ups, or warnings that seem to come out just out of nowhere. And if you had years of glowing evaluations like Jane, and suddenly you're painted as a subpar performance right after you raised a concern, that's no coincidence. And the purpose of this move is twofold. First, it's a retaliatory punishment, a message that speaking up will tarnish your record. And the second, it creates a paper trail that employer can use to defend themselves later. And if Jane ever takes a legal action or complaint goes external, the company will pull just out that file and say, look, we didn't fire you for her whistleblowing, and it was your poor performance, and just pointing to these curated documents. It's a cynical way to cover retaliation with a veneer of legitimacy. And Jane's stellar track record is being just cynically rewritten to set the stage for what might come next in the playbook. Play 4 is a promotion bait and switch. Rewards just vanish overnight. So before the turmoil, Jane was in the line for a promotion, and in fact, Months ago, her boss invited that she was a top candidate for a new team lead position with a raise, but after she spoke up, that tune changed just completely. So now the promotion is off the table, and the position she wanted filed by someone with half her experience. And that pay raise, everyone just expected it a year again, and Jane's name mysteriously disappeared from the list. And when she inquires, she gets a curt response. So we've evaluated some roles, maybe next year, or no further explanation. And this maneuver is a promotion bait and switch. So it's where the promotion or raises you've earned evaporate once you become troublesome in the boss eyes. And an employer might pass you over for a promotion or deny a raise you clearly deserved, purely because asserted your legal rights. And often they won't admit the real reason. They will cite nebulous justifications. We went with someone who is a better fit, or claim budget issues. But when the only thing that changed between being the top candidate and being sidelined is that you reported a problem, it screams retaliation. And this tactic hits you where it hurts. So your career grows and your wallet. And it meant to send a message not just to you, but to your colleagues as well, as loyal soldiers get the rewards and squeaky wheels get left behind. So Jane now sees that the promotion she worked hard for her has been snatched away as a punishment, and the realization is devastating. Yet the playbook isn't just done, so there are even just nastier moves ahead. Play 5 is the demotion, disguise, just reorganizing you out of the way, as just when Jane thinks that her job couldn't just get more difficult, she is called into a meeting with the management, and they deliver news that feels like a punch to the gut. So we are restructuring the department. They say, and effective immediately, Jane is being moved to a lower role, and it's pitched as a sideways or even a downward move, and maybe a different team or a special project that just so happens to carry just less status and perhaps lower pay. And Jane's responsibilities are slashed, and some of your prized projects are handled off to someone else. And the explanation, it's better use of resources, or this isn't a punishment, it's a reorganizational need. But Jane's know better, that it feels like a demotion in all but name. And this is a demotion disguise, as a retaliation play where the employer downgrades your job to make you heard professionally. And whether it's a formal demotion with a cut in the title and pay, or a formal shuffling to a trivial assignment, and the effect is the same. So your stature in the company diminishes, and any move to lessen your status, limit your responsibilities, or reduce your pay benefits after you complain is a suspect. Often it's couched in a fancy corporate speak, restructuring, reassignment, or just to mask the true intent. But if no one else is being restructured, except the person who made the fuss, odds are it's retaliation. And employers hope you will just accept this fate quietly, maybe even feel grateful you weren't fired outright. And for Jane, however, it's clear that this reorg is her employer's way to showing her side. It's demoralizing to have your career trajectory shoved in reverse for doing the right thing. Play 6 is the silent cuts, hours, benefits, and support slashed. As not long after, Jane notices her paycheck looks lighter without a warning. Her overtime hours have been cut back drastically. Next, her request to attend an annual industry conference, which the company usually sponsors, is denied. So she's told, we don't have the budget for that this year, even though colleagues are still just going. And Jane is also just finds out that her previously approved vacation just that doesn't have been approved, and scheduling suddenly just won't accommodate her time off, and bit by bit the perks, the conditions that once made her job decent are chipped away. And the silent cuts is all about just quietly reducing the benefits and the flexibility of the targeted employer's job. So this can mean just cutting hours so your paycheck shrinks, revoking previously promised perks, or denying requests that would just normally be approved. And these actions might fly under the radar because each one can be explained away. Just all sales are down and everybody's just tightening belts, or scheduling is tough. So maybe you can take a vacation next quarter, but when it consistently happens to the person who complained and not others, so it's a glaring red flag. So pay cuts, lost hours, or suddenly just losing eligibility for a bonus, or just benefits after a complaint are textbook retaliation. And similarly, so denying training, travel, or advancement opportunities that were just once encouraged can be a form of a playbook. And this aim is to make your work life less rewarding in every way. So lower income, no professional growth, and just no work-life balance consideration. And it's a death by 1,000 paper cuts. So for Jane, each small cut feels like part of a larger plan to squeeze her out. Next, play 7 is a smear campaign, so turning the team against you. As the weeks go by, so Jane realizes that not only is the management against her, some of her once friendly coworkers are acting like enemies. And one colleague tells her in the harshest tones that the boss has been just spreading rumors that Jane's complaint was just an excuse to cover her poor performance, and another coworker, previously just close teammate, now barely makes her eye contact. And in the meetings, a group of employees just snicker when Jane speaks up, and as they are just sharing some cruel inside joke, as she even overhears just one of them mutter the word snitch, and the workplace has become just openly hostile, and it feels like almost just everyone is on it. So this is a smear campaign, one of the nastiest plays in the Retaliation playbook. Here, an employer or manager enlists others just to do the dirty work or making your work like hell. So they might drop hints to your colleagues that you are not to be trusted, or outright encourage peers to ostracize or bully you. Sometimes it's subtle that coworkers suddenly just excluding you and just tying back to a play one, or just gossiping behind your back. So others time it's crossed into outright harassment, ridicule, hostile remarks, or social isolation that deliberately just engineered to punish you for speaking out. And employers who do this are leveraging peer pressure. It's not just your boss versus you. It feels like everyone versus you. This emotional toll is immense. And being bullied or humiliated at work by polls of colleagues can make even the toughest person crumble. And it's exactly what the retaliation wants, to break your spirit and push you just to give up. And Jane now finds herself just coming to work with a sense of dread, and the bracing for the next jab or icy stare. And her employer hasn't just fired her yet, but they've created a toxic environment and hoping she will decide, I can't just take this anymore, and resign. The play 8 is the final strike, as kicking you out just one way or another. As the last chapter of Jane's just ordeal arrives suddenly, but by now she almost expects it, and she called into a boss office and told that she's being let go and the reason. So they hand her a list of alleged infractions and performance issues, the ones they have been just piling up in her file just since the first spoke up, thanks to the plays 2 and 3, and it's just not working out. So they say with a sympathetic smile that doesn't just reach their eyes, and just like that, so Jane is out of a job, fired. And the room spins as she realizes that everything she's endured, the cold shoulders, the nitpicking, and the demotion are the rumors, it was all leading to this ugly conclusion. And the termination as a retaliation is a nuclear option. And many employers won't go this far unless they think they can get away with it. So, as a firing someone explicitly for reporting harassment, discrimination, or another protected issue is blatantly illegal. But that doesn't stop some from trying. And often under the cover of those manufactured performance problems or structuring excuses. And if the timing is suspicious, so close on the heels of your complaint, it's likely not a coincidence. And in the eyes of the law, being fired because you're engaged in protected activity like reporting wrongdoing is called wrongful termination. It's a clear form of retaliation. And employers know this, which is why they often just spend so much effort on the earlier place to create the pretext. Sometimes, instead of an outright firing, the employer's endgame is to make your work life so miserable that you make the move for them by quitting. And this now is a constructive discharge. So when the conditions became so intolerable that a reasonable person would feel compelled to resign, and legally, that's as much of a firing as a literal termination. And even if you hand it in your just resignation under duress, so it's all part of a final strike. Whether by pushing you out or shoving you the door, the employer is effectively just removing the problem. So you, the person who dared to stand up. And as Jane packs your things and walks out for the last time, it's a heartbreaking moment. But it's not the end of your story. And in fact, your fight might be beginning because Jane now knows these retaliation tactics for what they are, and she's not about to tell her employer and get the last word. So what's the conclusion? Knowledge is power, and fighting back against retaliation is the number one thing, just to have some proof or some data that you can use against your employer. As a Jane fictionary story is unfortunately inspired by real events that thousands of workers face every year. And if you've recognized any of these plays happening to you, just remember this: you are not a powerlessness, and the employer, and the reason your employer just hopes you will never find out about the retaliation playbook is because once you do, you can take an action to protect yourself and hold them accountable. So first, know your rights. Retaliation against an employer for reporting legitimate issues or exercising just certain workplace rights is flat out illegal under federal laws like the Civil Rights Acts or OSHA, the Whistleblower and Protective Act, and others, and the state laws. And employers just can't lawfully demote, harass, or fire you just for speaking up. If they do, they risk serious consequences. And so here is the secret: your boss doesn't want you to know. As getting caught for retaliation can cost the company big time. The average settlement for a harassment retaliation case is around $50,000, and the legal fees for a lost case can run even far higher, and all that on top of the damage to the company's reputation. So the second thing is, if you suspect that you've been retaliated against, document everything. So keep a journal of incidents, dates, so what happened, who was involved, same emails, just memos, and any evidence that might just support your case. And often it's a pattern and a timing that reveal retaliation. So for example, if you file a complaint in March, and by April you have your first bad review in years, so you got booted off a project. And those dots, when connected from a picture, so that's hard for an employee to ignore or deny. And next, consider reporting the retaliation. If internal avenues like HR aren't just feasible, or you're just trying them to know well, you can file a formal complaint with agencies like EEOC for discrimination, harassment related retaliation, or OSHA for a safety retaliation. So these agencies can investigate and even may take some legal action. In many cases, you also have the option to file a lawsuit against your employer for retaliation. So, for example, if you were demoted, and passed over for a promotion or fired because you spoke up, such a lawsuit can potentially compensate you for for your lost wages or other damages you've suffered but due to the retaliation actions. And you should act quickly to exercise those rights and document instances or suspected retaliation, and then so speak to an experienced attorney, law attorney, so about your situation and options, as knowing you have an expert in your corner can relieve a lot of stress and help you strategize your next steps effectively. So finally, seek support, as retaliation can take a serious emotional toll. So talk to trusted colleagues. You might not be alone, so others may have been just targeted before you, and lean on friends or family for encouragement. And you don't have to go just through it in the silence. And as we close this deep dive, so the key takeaway is empowerment. So through knowledge, and Jane's story and the retaliation playbook we've exposed should serve as a warning and a reassurance. And the warning is that, yes, so these underhanded tactics are real and happening in the workplace everywhere. And the reassurance is that, so now you can see them coming. And what was once a secret strategy is now a plan for you to recognize and name. So isolation, micromanagement, paper trails of false criticism, and stolen promotions, demotions in its use. So silent cuts to your job quality, smear campaigns, and a final strike of a wrongful termination. Everything. So you've learned all those plays. And to anyone just out there who has just bravely spoken up or is thinking about just raising their voice, so know that while the retaliation playbook is real, it doesn't guarantee the outcome your employer wants. So you have a counterparts available, your courage, your documentation, the law, and allies who will stand with you. And employers wield retaliation as a weapon of fear and silence, but an informed employee is a resilient opponent. So finally, don't let them intimidate you into silence. So if you smell retaliation, call it out, stand firm and seek help. And the moment you shine in the light of those dark tactics, so the playbook loses its power. And after all, so the most powerful thing your employer hoped you will never find out is that you have the right to a safe, fair workplace. And the law backs you up. So knowledge is power. And now that you have it, you can outsmart the retaliation playbook as its own game.